Let's bring Brian Bowman into this conversation. He is the mayor of Winnipeg. Mayor Bowman, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, David.
Listen, the situation that Manitoba finds itself in is a distinction and not a very good one. 2 weeks ago, you were urging people and leaders to stop tinkering with the rules and to actually do a lot more. The fact that that didn't happen when you were calling for it 2 weeks ago, what's that meant?
Well, it's meant a lot. Sadly, we've had daily case counts continue to grow. Our test positivity rate now has moved as high as 13.8% in the city of Winnipeg. And yesterday, our education minister and provincial officials had to make the move of closing our schools. And so, doctors, myself, many others in the community were calling for our provincial government to take stronger, more proactive measures weeks ago. Our premier at the time responded by saying we didn't need a panicked response. We weren't asking for a panicked response, we were asking for a proactive response. And sadly, the restrictions that were brought in on Friday, I think were far too late, but it was the right move to make. And we're obviously urging Winnipeggers to comply in letter and spirit with the new order so that we can weather this third wave of the COVID storm in our community.
What has been the cost? If it was a failure to implement new restrictions when you said they should have happened, if it was a failure, what is the cost of that failure?
Well, of course, it affects people's health, but it also affects our economy and it affects our businesses as well as the education that our children are having. My wife and I have 2 young sons. They're in public school and they'll be doing remote learning like others in Winnipeg and Brandon will be undertaking now for the next few weeks. And of course, you can't replace the quality education of our teachers who do outstanding work day in and day out in our community. And so we all suffer as a result. But the primary consideration, of course, is health. And stronger, more proactive measures is something that were called for last year in the second wave. Unfortunately, there was a bit too much reactionary nature to the provincial public health authorities. We sadly see a similar pattern with this third wave. Mm-hmm. And obviously hoping that everybody in our community can also do their part to make sure that we get through this.
Are you disappointed, Mayor, that the Premier didn't heed your calls earlier?
I think everybody that we're hearing from and certainly the calls from doctors were for stronger, more proactive measures. And so I just hope that the learning occurs each time we go through one of these phases. You hope we can improve and Winnipeggers have they can do their part as well. I mean, we do see far too many people in our community not following those fundamentals. And that's something we're also continuing to urge Winnipeggers themselves to make sure that we're all learning what we can do better to flatten the curve as quickly as possible so we can get through this storm as quickly as we can.
But Mayor, we take signals from our leaders. You're signaling something now. You were signaling more than 2 weeks ago that there should be stronger restrictions to avoid the awful situation the province now finds itself in. Why do you think the Premier didn't act sooner when you and doctors and many others were calling for restrictions right then?
Yeah, I mean, the Premier would be the one that could answer, his own rationale. But I think in terms of just the provincial government, I mean, we saw this wave coming. Sadly, we've been watching what's been going on in Ontario and Alberta. Fellow Canadians have been really hit hard by this third wave. And I mean, we're here in the prairies. And so it was like looking at a train coming from Regina. You could see it a long ways away. You could see it coming. We could see what was going on in other provinces. And so that's why doctors, myself, and many others were calling for stronger, more proactive measures weeks ago, rather than kind of the reactionary nature that we're seeing now. And so that being said, hopefully these orders will help and hopefully Winnipeggers will do their part to flatten the curve once again.
Absolutely. And you talk about your kids and all kids right across the province who've now moved to online learning. Why is it in your mind, or is it in your mind appropriate that kids have to do that, parents have to make that sacrifice but malls can stay open?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, what the provincial government did in the fall is they distinguished between essential and non-essential products and services. So businesses that were selling goods could sell essential goods and services only. They haven't gone that far this time, and so having the school children out of school is not something I think anybody wants to see. And why they wouldn't go as far as they went last November is something that, with the data and the modeling that the province is privy to, they would be in a better position to answer that. But it is hard on kids. I mean, it's hard on not only their education, but it's hard on the mental health of far too many children in our community.
And their parents as well. Their parents, of course, particularly with younger children who have to keep working. But it does, there have been many experts who have suggested over the year that we've had, more than a year of this pandemic, who said, if you're going to shut down in-person school, it should be the last thing that you do, and you should try to do everything else before then. And yet you have a situation where, albeit in smaller numbers, there are number restrictions, but people still can go to the mall, whereas kids have to be sitting in front of a computer. Is that right in your mind?
Yeah, it's not something I can explain, but it's certainly. I mean, I'll be doing some juggling as well. My wife is working from home right now, and she and I will be doing some juggling to make sure that our children's education is protected as best we can. And far too many don't have the positions that we have and the ability to juggle like we have. So it's very hard on families right now, and it's also going to be affecting our economy. So you're right. It is something that you want to see as a last resort, and obviously that's why many of us were calling weeks ago for stronger, more proactive measures, so that we could hopefully mitigate from having to close schools in the first place.
What would be the one thing you would want the Premier to take away after not having heeded your calls and the calls of many medical professionals 2-3 weeks ago? What would be the one thing you would hope that the Premier has taken away at this point?
Well, I think for all of us in positions of leadership, you're always trying to learn and continually learn. And the lessons from the second wave demonstrated that when measures were put in place by governments and by our provincial government, Manitobans responded, and they did their part, and they'll do their part again. And so I think it's just, we obviously want to learn what works and what doesn't work, and try to go from there. And I think all officials are trying to do that as well. And hopefully that learning will continue.
Mayor Bowman, thank you very, very much for your time this afternoon. I know the hospitals in your city are very busy, so we appreciate everything happening there.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.
You too.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.